In this video, we'll go over how to make this teardrop, which is one of the basic quilling shapes, as well as a small variation on it, the shaped or curved teardrop. I'll first show this with the slotted tool and more traditional quilling paper, and then I'll show it with paper that's heavier and wider using the needle tool. This one starts the same way all quilling shapes do. Place the paper into the slot of the tool, slide the tool down to the end of the strip, and roll the strip. It doesn't matter if you roll it towards yourself or away, whichever you prefer. Use your other hand to guide the paper and keep it in line as you roll. When you roll the whole thing, push it off the tool and release it to relax. You might be using a circle sizing board for your project, which is used to make coils of a certain size. So if you do that, place it into the circle and let it relax. For my patterns, I don't like using the circle sizing board. Instead, I use the reference image and just let it relax to about the same size as the shape in the reference image. You can see this coil was much too big, so I've cut off some of the strip. I know the coil you have is a circle at this point and you're looking at a teardrop trying to get the right size, but just trust your instinct that if it's about the same size, it should be fine. You can also kind of pinch it to see how it will match up when it's shaped. Quilling strips come in a lot of different lengths, so you might not need the whole strip, just cut off what you don't need. And then keep playing with it. If you need to make it bigger or smaller, adjust it by pulling the tail to make it smaller, or unravel it just a little and re-roll it looser with your fingers to make it bigger. When you're satisfied with the size, glue the coil closed. And then to shape it, all you're going to do is pinch one side, but a couple of tips before you do that. First, find the seam where you glued the coil closed and make that where the point is. This is optional, but it'll give it a cleaner look than just having the seam on the side. My other tip here is that when you start to pinch, you might see that your lines are uneven, you have gaps in there. So to adjust that, wiggle the center of the coil back and forth and rotate it around while you start to pinch down with the hand that's holding it. Keep wiggling the center back and forth and rotating it as you start to pinch down, and you'll see how the lines start to even out. Then pull the center of the coil back and just pinch down. Again, I've got the seam where I glued it closed right at the point. You can keep adjusting it from there if you would like. Depending on the look that you're going for, you might want to squish it to make it wider or pinch it to make it more narrow. And that's all there is to the teardrop shape. For the variation on this, you'll just curve the point of the teardrop. It doesn't really matter which way you curve it, but I usually try one way or the other, and I find that one naturally bends better. You can see how the lines point in one direction. Right here, they're pointing up. I find that side doesn't bend as easily, so I curve the other side. Just curve it with your fingers to round it out. And if you would like some extra help getting it really curved, you can curl it around the handle of your tool or grab a pen or anything like this to wrap it around to get this effect. That's optional, but it'll help you get a nice curve to it. So there's your shaped teardrop. Check it on the reference image and you can see how even though we were roughly measuring it earlier, it fits. If yours isn't exact, don't sweat minor differences. All right, I will now show it with different paper. This paper is wider at a 1/2 inch and it's also cut from cardstock, so it's heavier weight. This is less traditional, but it's the paper that I use because I like the bold, chunky result that you get like in this heart. You can use whatever paper you'd like. The paper is too thick though to fit in the slotted tool, and even if it could, it's not long enough to use for the wide paper. So for this paper, I'll need to use the needle tool, which can be used for any width and weight of paper. With heavier paper, I like to start by softening the paper by running it between my finger and my tool. This just makes it easier to work with and starts it curling in the right direction. Then place the tool at the end of the paper strip and start to curl the paper around it. I usually just kind of back the paper onto the tool and then start to curl around it. This time, instead of turning the tool stays still and your other hand curls the paper around it. After a few turns, you can see that it's hard to keep the paper in line, so I find it easier to just get it started on the tool, then slip it off and use my fingers to curl the rest. Once you've rolled to the size that you want, the rest of the steps to shape it are the same. Hold it up to the reference image to get a rough idea of the size, cut off any excess paper that you don't need, and you can again pinch it a little to see if it's the right size to measure it up against the reference image. Then keep adjusting it by rolling it tighter or looser until it looks about right. Once you feel good about the size, glue the coil closed. And then shaping it is the same. Again, find the seam where you glued it and make that the point where you'll pinch, and then pull back the center of the coil. And if you need to even out your lines, play with it by wiggling the center back and forth and rolling it around a little as you start to pinch. Once your lines are even, then pinch it down firmly into a point. So there's your teardrop shape. And to make the variation, shaping it's the same, just curve it using your fingers or use the handle of your tool to get it really rounded out. And there's your shaped teardrop. All right, that's all there is to it. As always, drop a comment or email hello@thequillingedge.com for any assistance. Have fun and happy quilling!